In this video, I'm going to talk about the planning and the logistics of getting to an ayahuasca retreat. And although this might sound quite mundane, trust me, it's super important. And if you get this planning part wrong, it can easily derail the whole thing and just turn it into a massive, stressful shitstorm. So to understand the importance, let's ask a simple question. Why are you going on retreat? Now, without knowing your personal details, the answer is probably going to be some kind of variation on to work on yourself. And since you are investing time, money, and your psychological well-being into this trip, then it makes sense that you want to get the most out of the experience. So if you turn up for this retreat feeling stressed out, tired, hungry, pissed off, jet-lagged, it's pretty obvious that the odds are going to be against you that this is a productive exercise. And that kind of mindset can lead to you thinking that this whole thing was just a big mistake. Trust me, I've been there. The key problem that we're dealing with here is travel, because most of us are going to be clocking up a significant number of air miles just to get to one of these places. You know, even if you're not traveling to South America, you might be looking at some pretty big train journeys or car rides. But as you know, I'm coming from Europe and I'm going to Peru, so that's what I'll base this video around. So from where I live in Europe to get to Iquitos in Peru, then I'm looking at 3 separate flights, which if you're a cheapskate like me, then all those flights are going to be economy class. Now these 3 flights combined will take around 24 hours of travel time, so an entire day of just pure travelling. Now it's actually even worse than that, because the time shown here only accounts from when your first flight leaves until your last flight lands. So we need to add some additional time onto that to cover from how long it takes to get to the airport. In my case, that's an extra hour by train, plus the 2 hours it takes to get through the airport security and all the additional pandemic checks. And then, once you arrive, you have to go through customs, get out of the airport and get to wherever you're staying. So it can easily stick another 5 hours total travel time on top of this and say that you'll have endured close to 30 hours of non-stop travel by the time you get to Peru. The very first time I went to Peru, I did the whole thing back to back, exactly like I just described, and it was fucking awful. Like for the first few days, I just felt so tired and sleep deprived. I just wasn't in the right place to take in transformative, mind-bending substances. And it took me until about halfway through the retreat just to feel normal again. So I would spare you that suffering, and here is what I've done on subsequent trips to make this whole travel thing less of an ordeal. And it allows me to bring a more optimized version of myself to the retreat on day 1. So first is to not do the whole journey in one back-to-back block. Whenever you're thinking about being able to sleep on the plane or that you really enjoy flying, that it's going to be super fun, it probably won't. It will suck the soul right out of you. So the answer here is to try and spread the flights out over a couple of days with a layover to adjust. And this has a couple of benefits. The first is that you get a chance to get some rest, and the second is that these layover flights are usually a lot cheaper because people want the shortest, fastest trips, so take advantage of that. Another advantage is that you get the chance to check out some of these places that you're passing through. You know, Lima's a great example here because it's a beautiful city with some stunning beaches, so don't necessarily be in a hurry just to restrict your visit purely to the airport as you pass through. So with all this in mind, let me explain how I'm staging out my upcoming trip from Europe to Peru in order to arrive in the best possible mental and physical condition. So the retreat that I'm going to starts on a Sunday. So ideally I want to be in Peru by the Friday to give me the Saturday as a kind of adjustment day. So I'm actually going to start on the Thursday night by taking my first flight, which will get me to Amsterdam. Then that gives me a full night's sleep there. I'm just going to get myself a cheap hotel next to the airport, something that's even walking distance from the airport, so I don't have to start catching taxis or getting trains or anything. And then from there on the Friday, I will then do the big long flight to Peru. And then again, instead of getting straight on another plane and going on to Iquitos, I'm going to stay overnight in Lima. And on Saturday morning, straight after breakfast, I can get on my last flight to Iquitos, and I'll be in Iquitos just before lunchtime. So I've spread the total flights over those 3 days, and yeah, 1 flight a day, very doable. I've had a good night's sleep in between each one, and then by the time I get there on the Saturday morning, I'm feeling pretty fresh and ready to go. My next tip is to not take any check-in luggage, only take a carry-on backpack. Now this saves time at the airport when you're both arriving and departing because you just can check in online, you don't have to wait or queue up to collect your bags. And if you're carrying everything you need with you, then there is zero chance of your luggage getting lost in transit, which I have seen happen, and trust me, you do not want to be that guy who turns up in the middle of the jungle with only the clothes on his back. My final tip is to put as much time as possible on the other side of the retreat. Integration is something I've talked about in previous videos, in that you want to give yourself as much space as possible to kind of like contemplate and wind down after what you've just been through. So seriously consider taking at least an extra day or two to unwind after the retreat. Maybe book a riverside hotel or spend a couple of days at the beach in Lima. You don't want to be trying to sandwich the whole thing into as short a space as possible, like flight in, retreat, flight out. Don't do that, give yourself a bit of space. So that's my tips in terms of logistics and travel. I hope you find something useful in there that helps you plan your own trip. As always, a big thank you to those who support me via Patreon, and also to any of you guys who sat through an advert to watch this. It's very much appreciated. If anyone has any questions or tips of their own, then leave a comment or come and say hello on either Discord or Reddit, and stay tuned for more videos like this where I'll be discussing the ayahuasca diet and how to deal with legions of jungle mosquitoes. Thanks a lot for watching. See you next time.